If you're looking for a small fixed-blade knife that can disappear into your outdoor gear but still give you serious cutting performance, the MKC Tactical WARGOAT is a pretty interesting one. This is the first tactical knife from Montana Knife Company, and instead of making it huge and heavy, MKC went in the opposite direction. We're getting a compact blade, a very lightweight build, premium steel, and a grip that's designed to stay secure when things get rough. But at the same time, this isn't a knife that's going to replace a larger bushcraft blade for every job. So let's take a closer look at what the WARGOAT actually brings to the table and where it makes the most sense. The first thing that caught our attention is where this design came from. The knife uses the same basic blade shape as MKC's Speedgoat, which is already a popular design in the company's hunting lineup, but MKC took that lightweight platform and reworked it for a much more demanding role. The WARGOAT is a little thicker than the Speedgoat, and the blade is reinforced further down toward the edge and tip instead of simply making the spine thicker. That gives us a little more rigidity and strength without turning the knife into a bulky piece of gear. And honestly, we like that approach. A tactical knife doesn't always need to be some giant 8-inch blade hanging off your belt. For everyday outdoor tasks, cutting cord, opening packages, preparing food, making small camp cuts, or handling general campsite jobs, a compact fixed blade can be much easier to carry and actually reach for. The knife comes in at 7 7/8 inches overall, with a 3.5-inch blade that's about 0.125 inches thick, and the whole knife weighs only 2.23 ounces. That's incredibly light for a full-tang fixed blade, especially considering how much strength MKC tried to build into the design. Once we get to the handle, this is where this one starts feeling very different from a traditional outdoor knife. It uses G10 scales, but MKC didn't leave them smooth. They milled lines into the surface to create additional texture, and that makes a noticeable difference when we're holding the knife. The handle is relatively slim, and at first glance, it can almost look too small. But once we get it in hand, the textured G10 gives us a surprisingly secure grip without adding a lot of bulk. There's also a ring at the end of the handle, and this is probably going to be one of those features people either really like or simply don't need. From an outdoor perspective, the ring gives us another way to retain the knife and keep it from slipping out of our hand, especially when we're working around wet conditions or moving around camp. And honestly, we appreciate that MKC didn't try to pretend this feature is for everybody. A ring changes the way a knife feels in the hand, and some people are going to prefer a more traditional handle. But if you like the added retention and the ability to keep a very compact knife secure, it makes sense here. The handle also uses titanium screws with an anodized finish, which gives the whole thing a pretty clean appearance. Between the textured G10, the hardware, and the Cerakote blade, the knife has that very intentional tactical look without going overboard. Of course, the real heart of the knife is the steel. MKC went with MagnaCut stainless steel, and that's one of the biggest reasons the WARGOAT feels more serious than its size would suggest. MagnaCut was specifically developed as a knife steel to balance toughness, edge retention, and corrosion resistance rather than forcing you to sacrifice one characteristic for another. For an outdoor knife, that combination makes a lot of sense. We don't always get to use a knife in perfect conditions. It can get wet, dirty, sweaty, or sit in a pack for days before we actually need it. Having stainless steel with strong corrosion resistance gives us a little more peace of mind, while the edge retention means we shouldn't constantly be reaching for a sharpener. And the nice thing about MagnaCut is that it isn't just about holding an edge forever. It's also relatively easy to resharpen compared with some of the more extreme edge retention steels. So when we eventually do need to touch it up, it isn't going to turn into some huge maintenance project. The blade itself is finished in Cerakote, and this isn't just there to make the knife look cool. Because MagnaCut is already stainless, you could reasonably ask why we need another protective coating. But the Cerakote gives the blade a flat, non-reflective appearance, which can be useful when we don't want a shiny blade catching sunlight. For an outdoor knife, that also gives the knife a much more subdued appearance. We're getting the corrosion resistance of the stainless steel underneath, while the coating adds another layer of protection and changes the overall finish. There are different color combinations available, including black and Barrett brown, so we can match the knife to the rest of our gear instead of having one bright, polished blade sticking out like a sore thumb. A knife this small and light really only makes sense if the carry system is equally practical, and that's another area where MKC put some thought into it. The included sheath is designed around different carry options, and there are enough mounting holes to give us some flexibility depending on how we want to set it up. The deep carry clip also makes it possible to carry the WARGOAT inside a pocket rather than having it permanently exposed on the outside of our gear. And that's honestly one of our favorite things about the size. At just over 2 ounces, it doesn't feel like we're adding another heavy piece of equipment to an already loaded pack. We can put it on a belt, pack strap, or other gear setup, and it doesn't become a noticeable burden. MKC also offers additional Kydex sheath options with multiple carry positions, including vertical and horizontal setups, which gives us even more flexibility if the standard configuration isn't exactly what we want. Now this is where we think it's important to set realistic expectations. This is definitely not a giant survival knife, and it's not trying to be one. If we're building a shelter, chopping branches, processing large pieces of wood, or doing heavy-duty camp work, we'd rather have a larger blade designed specifically for those jobs. But that's not really the point here. It is at its best when we want something compact, lightweight, durable, and easy to keep with us. The 3.5-inch blade is large enough for a wide range of everyday cutting tasks without taking up much space. We can use it around camp, on a hike, while overlanding, or as a backup blade in a larger outdoor kit. And because the knife weighs only 2.23 ounces, carrying it around all day doesn't feel like a sacrifice. That compact size is actually one of its biggest advantages. The WARGOAT isn't a cheap knife, and that's probably the biggest thing we have to consider. Current examples put the knife well into the premium fixed blade category, with the original WARGOAT carrying an MSRP around $325. So we're not buying this because it's the cheapest way to get a 3.5-inch fixed blade. We're paying for the combination of American manufacturing, Magna-cut steel, lightweight construction, Cerakote, G10 handles, and the overall attention to detail. MKC says its knives are made in Frenchtown, Montana, in the USA. And honestly, that's where this knife starts making more sense. If you simply want a basic knife for throwing into a camping bin, there are plenty of less expensive options. But if you specifically want a premium, ultra-light fixed blade that's built around portability and durability, this one becomes much easier to justify. After looking at the WARGOAT as a complete package, we think MKC made a pretty interesting first step into the tactical side of the knife market. It takes the lightweight Speedgoat-style platform, adds a little more thickness and rigidity, brings in Magna-cut steel, gives us a highly textured G10 handle, and packages everything into a knife that weighs just 2.23 ounces. The biggest limitation is also pretty obvious. This is a compact knife, so it isn't going to handle every heavy-duty outdoor task. But if our goal is to carry something small, capable, corrosion-resistant, and easy to keep on our gear without adding unnecessary weight, the WARGOAT makes a lot of sense. And honestly, that's probably what we like most about it. It doesn't try to be everything. It's a specialized, lightweight fixed blade that can handle the everyday cutting jobs we're likely to run into outdoors, while giving us the premium materials and construction we expect at this price. For hikers, campers, hunters, overlanders, and anyone who wants a compact fixed blade that's built in the USA, the MKC Tactical WARGOAT is definitely one worth taking a closer look at.